Scribblers, we're back with another selection of some awesome backlist books for you to check out. Today's focus is on dialect. So, dialect is defined as a particular form of a language which is peculiar to a specific region or social group. Okay, it's something that we easily pick up on when we hear it in real life, but it can be very difficult to put onto the page of a book. And we've all read books at some point where an author has attempted to include dialect or even just an accent, and it's a bit cringy to read. We're like, oh, why are they doing that? It just doesn't land, right? It pulls you right out of the narrative. So overusing dialect can bump that reader out of the story, and it's something that needs to be used deftly so that the reader is aware of it, but it also doesn't interrupt their enjoyment of the story. Okay, it's a very tricky skill to have to refine. Um, Otherwise, when it is too heavy-handed, at best, it's just annoying, and at worst, it's downright offensive, right? So getting dialect right is definitely a skill that needs to be honed if you plan on using it to some degree in your writing. So today I'm going to discuss 4 different books that do an absolutely spot on job of embracing dialect and using it to create another layer of world and character building in their stories. So first up is Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. So in this story, the main character, Tracker, is hired to find a missing boy. The world building is grounded in African mythology and folklore, and so as James was writing, he pulled in elements of dialect and sentence structure that add to the authenticity of this made-up world. What I really liked about how he did this and how he handled his dialect is that it's intuitive, and I didn't get stuck trying to figure out what was actually being said. It definitely something that slowed me down a little bit the first few times I ran across it, just because the grammar and the word order is so different from what I'm used to. But again, it was just done so deftly that I settled in very quickly and was able to pick up. And actually, I really enjoyed it. Like, the more that I got into the rhythm of the way that the characters spoke, the more I was like, I'm into this. I love it so much. So he does just a fantastic, fantastic job. Second on my list is The Stars and the Blackness Between Them by Junauda Petrus. In this beautiful and heartbreaking book, it will absolutely destroy you in the best way possible. Petrus taps into the rhythm and cadence of Creole language spoken in Trinidad. So unlike the dialect in Black Leopard, Red Wolf, we have more of a blend of English and a variety of other languages that are actually used by the people of Trinidad. So this is like a combination of French, Hindi, and Spanish, interspersed with the English, right? So this language really just flows like poetry. And again, although it varies from the standard English that a lot of readers are going to be used to when they pick up this book, it's very intuitive, and it does so much work in developing Audrey's character and her emotions. You immediately feel at home listening to her tell her story in a way that is so authentic to her. It's beautiful. I really enjoyed this, and I'm not kidding when I say that it reads like poetry. It's so well done, so masterful. Our third book is The Stellar Dialect from the book Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. All right. So this book goes in a very different direction from our previous books, because instead of using existing dialects, it really creates its own version of a future dialect, right? So Cloud Atlas brings together, I think it's 5 separate point of views, 5 separate stories wherein these characters are kind of all being reincarnated into different lives, and they keep finding each other, right? It's so cool. The way that he weaves this all together is just phenomenal. And in the future, the most future of all the societies, really, society has just collapsed, right? And Mitchell creates this new pidgin language based on American culture that is really fascinating to read. So I'm not going to lie, this one, when I read it, it really did slow me down quite a bit the first few times I encountered it. But I found that if I was reading and I was able to speak the words out loud and read those lines out loud, I could hear it. Kind of almost like somebody sends you a text and they've misspelled some things because they use text to speech, and it didn't quite pick up what they were saying. But if you read it out loud, you're like, oh, that's what they meant. I got it now. So I was able to figure out what all they were talking about. And I feel like the author almost wanted to jar the reader and to make them pause. So it felt very intentional to me. It didn't feel like it was not well done. It felt as though David Mitchell really wanted to make me stop and be like, wait, what is happening? Why is this so strange? And really think about what was being said by those characters, and then it relates back to other things and other stories, and just kind of like some general pop culture type things. Um, so the film version of Cloud Atlas also incorporates that language, and it's so cool to hear. Like, they just did such a good job. I highly recommend the film. The book is delightful. The film is amazing. Like, watch them. They're really good. And as an additional bonus in Cloud Atlas, because the book does span centuries, it starts with, I think it starts out in like the late 1700s, early 1800s. Mitchell even gets into like colloquial slang of different eras. And while this isn't quite dialect, it is dialect adjacent. And it's just a really cool book. And the way that he incorporates all these different speech patterns and ways of speaking, because language is not static, right? It's always changing. It's always evolving. So it's really cool, and I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite books. All right. My fourth book is Goddess in the Machine by Lora Beth Johnson. So similar to Cloud Atlas, this book heads into the future and has created a new version of English. So when you read it, you're immediately aware that this isn't what you're familiar with, but the context and the way that it's crafted really just allow the reader to easily understand the meaning. And it helps that it generally follows like the same basic grammatical structures of our current American English. So for American readers of the book, it's you're going to get it really quick, right? So these are just 4 examples of just fantastic books that change the dialect and create this. And you'll see it's not overpowering in any of these examples. It's a little bit, it's just enough to let you know that it's there. And then you start to just get a little bit used to it, and then they'll start to be a little bit more and a little bit more. But they gradually ease you into it, and it's just not over the top. It's not just on the page, and it doesn't make you be like, oh God, that's such a cringy sentence. I can't believe that they wrote that. So really, really fantastic examples if you're working on putting some type of dialect into your own book. Also, another way to do that would be to kind of like write it the way that you think it would be, and then find a sensitivity reader. If it's something that's like a current dialect or a current thing, or just find people and like, does this work? Am I doing anything odd here? And then listen to them. That's a really important part whenever you get feedback, is to listen to that sensitivity reader or that developmental editor, because they're telling you something for a reason, and you want to listen to that, right? So my final, I don't really have any more examples. I only did 4 actual books this time, not my usual 5. But I really only want to try to highlight books and discuss books that I have actually read. And those are the ones that stood out to me from my own reading history. So just as a couple other places, you can look for some neat dialect things and how people like form these patterns and speeches and all that kind of stuff. Dystopian books are famous for this, right? They're usually set in a future, and they're great places to find dialects and conlangs. So if you've ever watched the TV show on the CW, the 100, it's one of my favorite shows in the world. But you start watching that, and they have all of these dialect things, because you've got people who are living up in space, you have the people who are living on the ground, and then you end up having some other people there. I'm not going to completely spoil it for anybody, but the way that they speak and how they come with these languages, you pick up things and you're like, wait, what did they just say? That's so cool. Like, how did they get there from that? So that's a great place to look, is in all those dystopian books, right? You might want to check out Scott Westerfeld's Ugly series, and of course, the all too relevant 1984 by George Orwell and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. So those books all take, again, like this futuristic look at America and like our world, and they do things with the language, which is just, it's fascinating really when you start looking at that. So please leave me a comment and share your favorite book with strong dialect or conlang in it. And I'd love to hear about it. I might pick it up and read it. And that is it for today, Scribblers. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Happy writing.